All right, let's play a little educational chess game. I have white, and I'm going to start with the pawn to e4. He plays c6, the CARO-KANN defense, against me. I'm going to play my two knights variation. I'm not playing d4. Look, I'm playing both knights. He plays bishop to g4. I'm going to question his bishop. I play h3, attacking his bishop. If he takes my knight, it develops my queen, and I'll have gained the pair of bishops. Even though I'm well aware that he can then play e6 and have a very solid pawn structure on the white square. He takes, I recapture with the queen, of course. He plays knight to f6. So now, how am I going to create play on the white squares? Let's take on d5. If he recaptures with the pawn, there could be a move like bishop. b5 check, that can sometimes be interesting. It's not that serious, he can block quite easily. The push to e5, that can be interesting. The knight retreats and the move to e6. The knight attack, I weaken his defenses. I weaken his structure. That's what I'm going to do, e5 here. I'm attacking his knight, and after that, I'm going to play e6. I'm going to take as a point of contact this pawn on f7 here to weaken his white squares. He no longer has a bishop of white squares, I have one. So we're weakening all of that. If, in any case, he doesn't take, I'll take. So he takes. So now I'm down a pawn. Can I take advantage of the situation a little? I'm looking at the move d4 to try to fix e6. That's what I'm going to do, by the way. d4 immediately. That frees my bishop on the black square. He plays knight f6. And now I'm going to develop so I can put a rook on the column and attack e6. Notice that if I play a move like queen e2 to defend e6, he only has queen d7 or king f7. King f7, that's really not appealing. I'd really like to be able to put my bishop on h3 to attack that pawn on 6, but there's still a lot of obstruction. Listen, I'm going to play g3, maybe followed by h4 takes h3 at some point. Now he's going to start playing c5, attacking on the black squares, c5, knight c6, things like that. He plays g6, so I'll play h4. I give the h3 square to my bishop. I'm going to attack the pawn on 6. Kingside castling, the rook to e1, maybe at some point the queen, and he'll have to take care of his defenses on the white square. So he played g6, bishop to g7 to have kingside castling, put the rook opposite my queen, and the bishop on the black diagonal. That's interesting too, but already he has to deal with the problem on e6. If he plays queen to d7, queen to e2, and he won't be able to do kingside castling because of bishop takes on e6. You see, l'attaque de nuit created a weakness on the white square, while I have a bishop on the white square and he doesn't, and I'm going to bombard that weakness. Anyway, in chess, to keep as few people unhappy as possible, you always have to keep hitting the same targets. So that's what I'm doing. So he played queen d6. And so after queen e2, maybe I'll go king d7 or king f7, but it's still a precarious position for his king, so I'm going to play queen e2. Always attack that pawn on 6. Strike where it hurts. Plus, I'm moving away from the f-file, because if he kingside castling, at some point the rook would end up face-to-face with my queen. So I'd rather not do that. After taking on 6, it simply wins back the pawn I gave up. By the way, he kingside castling, and in the end he gives me back the pawn on 6. I could exchange queens, but I think I'll play bishop. Takes, e6, check, king h8, and I'm looking at h5 because I can do queenside castling. Eventually play h5, but the knight takes, rook takes, pawn takes, but unfortunately I can't do it. Queen takes because my bishop won't be protected. Otherwise, I'd like to break up his castling a bit like that. Listen, for now, I'm not going to take his pawn on 6. Anyway, he can't protect it. If he plays e5, pawn takes, the fork. I'm mainly going to develop my bishop, I think. Maybe play bishop d2 to have queenside castling. I also have bishop f4, which attacks his queen. But queen b4, he attacks b2 and d4, but queenside castling. Why not? And queenside castling, the king will defend b2 and the rook will defend d4. That seems fine. But my bishop on f4 is exposed. At some point, he's going to play moves like knight h5, which will attack my bishop. That's a bit annoying. I don't know. Well, I'm going to play bishop f4. Listen here, my goal is to do queenside castling, to set up an opposite castling position where I hope I will be able to attack his king more easily than he will attack mine. I'll have to take the pawn on e6 and look for the h5 push. But I want to look for the h5 push in good conditions. Here I push back his queen, which comes to b4, attacking b2 and d4. So you see this bishop takes e6 check, king h8, h5 for example, knight takes, rook takes, pawn takes, queen takes. All of this is interesting, but there's a problem. He's attacking b2 and d4. So I'm going to play queenside castling first to solve these two problems. I put my king in safety, my rooks are connected, and I'm going to try to take on 6 and push h5. And even sacrifice at some point the exchange against his knight to destroy the shelter of his king. Well, here we're still in analysis, so I haven't played these moves, so maybe I won't play them. Because it's easier to sacrifice when you're calculating variations than to actually play it in the game, so I'll think carefully before doing it. He plays c5, and he's right. He's trying to break open the center, to open the center in favor of his bishop on the black square, and to try to open the file. C. By the way, against my king, it's interesting. All right, let's take his pawn on 6 with check now. Sooner or later, we have to take that pawn from him. And now I'm going to seriously calculate h5. Because if he takes my pawn, I take his. He takes my knight. He's almost mated, but not quite. He has his knight defending h7. Otherwise, I would have taken everything back with mate on h7. What do the other moves give? Knight takes on d5, I attack his queen. Knight takes, bishop recaptures. Afterwards, he might come and take on d4 with his bishop, threatening captures on b2. Maybe play bishop to e5. The pair of bishops against his king, but also towards my defense. f5, if he takes, I can recapture with the rook. Attack his queen. I can even recapture with the bishop. f5. Sometimes I can also take his knight as part of my plan to play h5. That could be interesting. f5, he's going to play against me. kd6. He's going to attack my dark square bishop like that. Now, I'm not ready yet to give up the dark square bishop for the knight. I think it's too soon. After queen e3, I'm not afraid of king g4 because the bishop takes me. After queen e3, what is he going to do to me? He can still play king g4 against me. If bishop takes, he can take on d4 with his bishop, his queen, and create forks against me. I have an interesting line after h5. Pawn takes, pawn takes, pawn takes, knight. Rook takes h7, check. Knight recaptures. And queen to h5. I'm threatening queen takes h7, mate. But does he mate me first on b2? Yes, he mates me first. Queen takes b2, mate. So it doesn't work. h5, then pawn takes, then pawn takes, then pawn takes knight. Rook takes h7, check. Knight recaptures. So I have to come in on h5, but he's going to mate me first on b2. Can I recapture on c3, attack his queen? He can play queen to a3, check, I move away, and he'll have avoided the worst. But if he moves his knight, I'll have rook to h1, and I'll still manage to mate him. All right, let's launch the attack. This is interesting, I think. This move, h5, a very interesting opposite castling attack. But where? I already have my rooks connected. His rook isn't playing, and his knight isn't playing. All my pieces are ready for battle. So I think the tactical exchange could turn in my favor. I'm not sure of myself, but since I don't have much time left now, I have to go for it. If knight takes, I'm really tempted to play rook. Takes, pawn takes, and then see what happens next. Maybe queen takes with ideas of rook to h1. To threaten mate on h7. If knight takes, rook takes, pawn takes, queen takes, pawn takes d4. I also have bishop to f5, which threatens mate on h7. Here I play h6, queen to g6. That still threatens mate on h7. Ah, yes, but he can give up the rook at any moment for the bishop. The knight is no longer there. Watch out for that. It's an interesting position, very dynamic and tactical. As someone who is more used to playing long strategic positions, here I immediately threw myself into tactical complications. It's all or nothing. This won't be a win on points, it'll be a knockout victory. And my opponent is thinking now. We said after pawn takes g6, he takes my knight, I take back h7 after check, the knight recaptures, and then I take back on c3 to avoid getting checkmated. I'm attacking his queen, which will check me. I move away, but his knight remains under attack, and I still have threats of bringing my queen to h5 or my rook to h1, with my bishop on a white square which restricts his king. See the knight attack. The fact that I took his bishop on a white square in the opening and played this knight to e6, which destroyed f7, I was able to attack along the diagonal. That puts his king on the file, where it's still very cramped, that king. So he plays knight takes. So we're going to have the position. Rook takes. The exchange sacrifice immediately. So after pawn takes, queen recaptures, pawn takes d4, and now certainly rook h1, he will have to deal with h7. If he plays h6, there will be sacrifices on h6. And not even the sacrifices, it will be bishop for h6, quite simply. He takes d4 with the bishop. Lots of interesting moves. I even have bishop e5 immediately interesting. Bishop e5, bishop takes, queen takes check, he will play rook f6. But I want to see what happens. Rook takes h7, king takes. Isn't there a mate here, though? Rook h1 check. He has to come to g7. Bishop h6 check. He has to come to f6. And now knight takes d5. And that's mate with the royal fork. All right, let's go. Rook takes h7, check. Well, bishop e5 was simpler, but it's less pretty. This way, it's still beautiful. Rook h1 check. He has to come to g7. He has no choice. Bishop h6. If he goes to h8, bishop takes rook. That's mate. So he has to come to f6, and now knight takes d5. And we do have mate. Maybe there were other ways, but this one is still elegant. So the computer gives me 88% accuracy versus 76 for my opponent. But let's see where I made a mistake, according to the computer. So I play e4, he plays the defense against me, CARO-KANN. Knight to f3, he plays d5, knight to c3. This is the two knights variation, so he decides to bring out his bishop. g4, that's usually the main response. So I play h3, he gives up his light-squared bishop, queen takes, and here, the move that should be played with black is e6. Because even if black are less well-developed, they have a very solid pawn structure on white square, with the bishop on black square, which combines very well, coordinating perfectly with their pawns on white square. It's very solid. That's actually what I often do myself with black against this type of opening from white, because I'm also a CARO-KANN defense player with black. But here he plays knight f6, and he's going to give me the opportunity to launch the knight attack. So I play e5, he moves his knight to d7, and then the push to e6. I know I'm losing a pawn, but I'm weakening his defenses on the white square, and that's what interests me. Because I captured the bishop on the white square a few moves earlier. So I play d4, and that's when the computer tells me that this move, d4, isn't very well played, and that it would have been better to play bishop e2. A more modest move. Because after d4, in reality, he could play e5. And if I capture, he can recapture with the knight and redeploy his knight a bit. Well, I still have good development. He will still have trouble sheltering his king. But that's the best thing he can do. He played knight f6. He redeployed his knight. And that's when I play g3. I intend to play h4 and bishop h3. Place my bishop from the white square to attack the only possible target, the pawn on e6. He plays g6. He's also going to fianchetto his bishop h4, bishop g7. And bishop h3, so I'm attacking e6. He comes to defend with the queen on d6. And now queen e2. The computer tells me that this is where I made my blunder. I should have played bishop f4. I was following the plan to play queen e2 immediately to attack e6. And here for black, it would have been necessary to play knight to h5 to free the bishop from the black square and attack the pawn on d4. In response, I would have had to play bishop e3 to defend and maybe queenside castling. That would have been a different game. In any case, the position is balanced according to the computer. If he now plays knight to h5, that's why the computer considers that I made a blunder by not playing bishop f4 right away, because in reality the position was in my favor. Whereas now, it's balanced. But it's only balanced if he plays king to h5. And he logically plays kingside castling. Players are ultimately taught not to put the knight on the edge and to castle quickly instead, so that's what he does. And now I play bishop to f4. He plays queen to b4, attacking d4 and b2, but queenside castling. For now, I haven't touched the pawn on d6 because I considered I could take it at any time. And he pushes c5 to try to open the diagonal, to eventually open the file for a rook, to try to create some play against my king. But this is where I have a deadly combination. Bishop also takes, and it's check. He probably should have played the rook to f7, actually, which would have been the most resilient, but instead he plays king to h8, facing my rook on h1. And this is something I often tell my students. The influence of a piece does not stop at the first obstacle it encounters, at the first piece it meets. The influence of a piece truly ends only where the check itself ends. So you have to look at the alignment with the entire king and follow up with h5. So he plays knight takes, but of course I had anticipated this many times, as I mentioned to you. When you launch an attack on opposite castlings, you shouldn't hesitate to sacrifice the exchange if it allows you to destroy the opponent's castling. And in fact, in all the variations, I considered this exchange sacrifice, as you saw. So rook takes on h5. He decides to play bishop takes h4. If he had recaptured here, I would have taken back with the queen, and I intended to play rook to h1 to attack. h7, threatening mate in case of h6, bishop takes, and the attack is actually decisive. You see, the evaluation bar on the right is completely white. But in the end, fortunately, he didn't take my rook because the endgame would have been less beautiful, so he plays bishop takes d4. That's when I sacrifice the rook on h7, king takes, rook to h1, check, king to g7, bishop to h6. Both bishops cause terrible damage. King to f6, and so knight takes d5 mate. But he had no way to avoid mate. If he went to h8 or h7, all I had to do was bishop takes rook, freeing my rook, and that was mate as well. So in any case, he was mated. But it's one of the most beautiful mating patterns. Well, I hope the game was instructive or entertaining. You can leave me likes, comments as usual, share the video, or support the channel. Goodbye, everyone.